Today we're going to the Loft Violin Shop in Columbus, Ohio, where we'll get a behind-the-scenes look at how string instruments are repaired by local expert craftspeople. Let's talk to some luthiers and learn about some instruments.
Oh, hi, well, welcome to the Loft Violin Shop. My name is David, and I'm a co-founder of the shop along with my brother Richard, and this is what we're all about.
Well, David, thanks so much for having us here. What actually happens in the Loft Violin Shop?
Just about a little bit of everything. We repair instruments, we occasionally get to make an instrument, we rent instruments to beginning students, work on violins for the school systems. Obviously, they have a lot of instruments that need constant maintenance. We see professionals from the Columbus Symphony, the whole range from beginners to professionals, repairs to sales to making, just about everything happens in here.
And this is amazing because you've been doing this for a long time. I believe you're celebrating an important anniversary this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, as of a few weeks ago, it was 50 years.
50 years.
My brother and I started this in January 1st of 1976.
Congratulations. That's really cool. So where are we going to go first?
Well, first we'll start in the workshop in the back.
I can't wait to see it. Let's go.
All right.
Hi, my name is Josh. I'm a luthier here at the Loft Violin Shop. This is the backroom workshop where we do work setting up and repairing instruments.
Well, this is such a cool space. What are these parts and how do they make sound and music?
So I have here a violin that would come after a maker had made the violin. This is called the scroll in the neck, and this is where the player holds the instrument. And then this part here is the fingerboard. The player pushes the strings down onto the fingerboard. And then we have the body of the instrument. And so that is made up of the face or the front. It has the F holes here in it. They're named kind of after an old-fashioned script, F. And then the sides, or ribs, which are made of maple and they're bent into shape. The top is carved. And then the back is also carved and it's made of maple. The face is typically made out of spruce. And then there's also ebony is a common wood that's used on violins. So the fingerboard, pegs, and also the saddle and in button.
I can understand why maybe the ebony part for the pegs and the stem, but why specifically spruce for the top versus maple for the bottom?
Right, so all woods resonate somewhat differently. And there's a long tradition of spruce being used for what is sometimes called the soundboard, and then maple being used for different parts of the instrument.
So how do they all come together to make this beautiful sound we love?
One of the things we do here is we'll get an instrument from a maker and then we set it up. So you can see this is a little bit different. It has pegs here, and that's for tuning the instrument. The strings are obviously on here. There's a bridge, which is hand fit to the face of the instrument. It's just held down, there's no glue. It's just held down with the string tension. And then the tailpiece, and then the final spot that it connects on the other side is the in button here. And so the strings connect from up here all the way down to here. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about how they make sound. So I think most people are probably familiar with a rubber band, and you kind of pluck it, you can kind of hear it, but you can feel the vibrations, but there's not a lot of sound.
That's about the level of my skill set.
Right, fair enough. But then most people probably also put a rubber band on a box. And so when you pluck the rubber band on a box, it's louder, you can start to hear it a little bit more. And that's because the vibrations go from the rubber band into the box, and the box has more surface area, and that excites the air around it, and then that travels through the air, and then we hear it. So a violin is maybe a little bit more complicated, but more or less it's the same principle. So instead of the rubber band, though, of course, we have the string. And when you either bow or pluck the string, it starts vibrating. And that vibration is a very unique motion. The string vibrates, and then the vibrating string moves vibrations into the bridge, and the bridge vibrates. And so at that point, the vibrations continue down into the face of the instrument, and then the whole instrument starts to vibrate. The air on the inside and outside of the instrument is excited by that motion. And then those vibrations go into the air, travel through the air to the listener. So the string moves on a violin in a very unique way. And that motion is called a Helmholtz motion. So if this were a string, and let's say that I'm the bridge right now, and Brendan is up by the pegs, the bow comes across here. And what it does is it pulls and then releases, pulls and releases over and over and over again. It's called the stick and slip because the bow's a little sticky. And so when you do that, you get something called the Helmholtz string motion, which is this sort of notch that runs up and down the string, and it looks like that. And it happens really, really, really fast. And that is the type of vibration that a violin string has.
And so it's going back and forth, generating the sound.
Over and over again, and it is continually generated by the bow.
You know, you got this little guy here. Is this really a violin?
Yeah, that's absolutely a violin.
So they come in different sizes?
They do, yes. So this is a violin that is for a young child, probably about 3 years old, just starting to learn to play the violin. You can see that they kind of look proportionally kind of the same.
And is that really important?
That's very important. So both as a player is growing up and as an adult, someone playing a full-size instrument to accommodate for variations from instrument to instrument. One of the most important ratios that we deal with as setup and repair luthiers is the ratio of the neck to where the bridge sits on the face of the instrument. And that's a 2 to 3 ratio.
So this piece and then from here to here?
Yes. Yeah, I'm glad to be here to show you about the science of violins and a little bit about how they're made. And I think Travis has some tools to show you about that we use every day to do our job.
Definitely, let's check that out.
Hi, I'm Travis here at the Loft. I also work on cello and basses here, and I'll talk about all the massive amounts of tools we use.
So I'm looking at this, and you got all kinds of really cool stuff. What's your favorite tool? And then walk us through what the different tools do.
Ooh, favorite tool is probably one that's in my hand most of the time, and it's a knife. Yeah, we use this for almost everything. Fitting a bridge, you use it to cut the feet, you use it to cut all the shapes to the bridge. Whenever we add new wood to an instrument, say if somebody breaks their corner off, which happens a lot, we'll fit new wood to it and we have to sit here and carve the wood to make it match the existing stuff. Other great tools are hand planes. We have a variety of hand planes. They make a flat on some things, or this one, you can see how the blade's much different. The blade on this one is very low, so it's meant to take fibers off flat, and then this one's a very high blade, so it scrapes the wood. So very fine shavings. You can see some of the shavings of this fingerboard I took off a little bit ago. That's this plane will do the shaping of the fingerboard because it's not flat, it's rounded this way and it's rounded this way, so you're kind of using that to find the shape we want out of the wood. Kind of
So
like
that's great. So that's definitely different from the planes you have in your house and in your garage that you're planing doors, for example.
Exactly.
These are specialized for violins and stringed instruments.
Yeah, this is a reproduction of a very old plane they made for like a year in 1920, and they've reissued it because they found that it works incredibly well for this type of work.
This is amazing. And I noticed you have different sizes of things. Do you have any other kind of graphically like big versus small things as you're
Well,
working
you
on?
saw we have the very small violins for 3-year-olds. Then we also have upright basses for me and Josh to play. Well, you have small tools and big tools. So we have, small clamps for the little violins, and then big clamps. Sometimes the basses need work on the inside, so this goes over the whole rib structure. Once we take the top off of the instrument, we can get that all the way to the inside of the middle of the back to clamp a new piece of wood in there, or a cleat. And then tiny little clamps like this we can use. Say if you develop a crack on the very top of your instrument, you can get in through the F-holes and do tiny little repairs right through here, just very minute repairs.
That's amazing. The skill set that you have to do this is incredible. How long did it take you to learn all this stuff?
Always learning, of course, always learning. Then every day is a new adventure. You hear something from somebody, or you find a new part at the hardware store that you can incorporate into work. Training-wise though, a lot of people apprentice and learn on the job. Some people go to schools with formal training. A lot of the times something breaks differently than it broke before, so it's a new approach every time. So it's problem solving all day long.
You want to see the rest of the place?
I'd love to see it. It's been amazing so far. my word. This is unbelievable. How many violins are in here?
There are over 100 instruments in here. If we don't count the bows, which I don't even know how many are in there, but violins up the ceiling, hanging all over the place. Now these are obviously a little bit larger, so these are violas that are just allowed to be in the violin room. And I'm sure you can see why we call this the bow room.
What I feel like I've learned is there's a lot of tradition in violin industry and string instruments, which is great. I love heritage. But I think there's also a lot of innovation that may have happened, particularly with the bows. Is that true, first of all? And if so, can you talk about it?
Yes, it is, but there are people who still would prefer the old way versus the new way. So in a bow, normally what you have, we'll show it here, this is actually a horse tail.
Okay. A real horse's tail?
Yeah, this is a real horse's tail. What we use, to put in the bow, but there are synthetics now that people use.
So what is this?
This is a synthetic here.
Okay.
So it's engineered to do the same thing that horsehair does, but it sounds a little different.
Okay.
There are reasons why somebody might prefer this over horsehair. It's a little more durable. It's not subject to being eaten by bugs.
Okay.
Which we have a...
Is that a problem?
Yeah, if you Google bow bug, you're going to see this prehistoric looking little animal. And it's the same kind of bug that might eat wool sweaters. They don't know the difference between wool and horsehair.
Sure.
And if bows are stored in the dark, they have a way of getting there and eating it out.
Okay. But only if it's real horsehair.
Right. So they won't bother this stuff.
Okay. Now, as an expert violinist, and of course the owner of this great establishment, do you have a preference between real horsehair or synthetic?
I'm definitely a real horsehair person.
Okay.
Yeah. And we also have wooden bows versus non-wooden bows. We have carbon fiber bows, fiberglass bows. We have bows that are actually a combination of wood and some sort of carbon fiber.
So that's interesting. Is that just kind of feel and appeal for the player? Because the wood part or the firm part is not what's hitting the strings. So does that really matter?
It matters an awful lot.
Oh, it does?
And it's hard to say exactly how that happens, but if I were to take a bow, and you won't be able to hear anything, but if I tap it on my knuckle and hold it the way I would normally hold it, there's a frequency to that I can feel. It's almost like a tuning fork.
Sure.
And the ability of that bow to transfer that vibration is very important.
It's critical along with
some bows that are very springy and reactive in the hands of a great player, they have more control. On the other hand, if you give a beginner a bow like that, they might be totally out of control.
Sure.
Because it reacts to the slightest movement in their hand. And so as you progress as a player, you'll need different equipment.
Yeah.
The nice thing about the carbon fiber bow is it's not affected by temperature, humidity so much. The same way that the synthetic hair is also not affected.
Sure.
Horsehair, on the other hand, is very much affected by humidity. And people think of having bad hair days. Well, we certainly have bad hair days in order to put horsehair in bows. We have to have a constant reminder of what the humidity is at the moment that we're doing the bow rehair.
No kidding.
So I need to be able to rehair a bow that will work in the dry days in the winter, and it'll still work in an outdoor summer concert. Well, thank you for visiting the Loft Violin Shop. I hope you learned something you didn't know before, and you feel free if you want to come by and learn a little bit more at any time.
This was absolutely fantastic. 50 years of this greatness. I learned about how to make them, how to repair them, and then you brought me upstairs to the beautiful spaces where the instruments are there for sale. Just absolutely fascinating. Thank you for having me in your space.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to have you.